Okay. So, but that's not going to have audio. I'm sorry, y'all. I gotta. Okay. Oh, no. Okay. I think I'm good. Y'all, I may not be, I don't know if I'm going to hear you if you talk, but we'll see. Okay. So we get all of these numbers from our original unit circle, right? It's nothing new. So now what is the inverse going to be? What is the inverse here? Switch the numbers. 0, 0. What's this going to be? 1 pi over 2, 0 pi, negative 1, 3 pi over 2, and 0, 2 pi. Right? Does that make sense what we just did? You found your data for sine, your points, and we switched them. So now we have to graph these. So what are your x values now? 0, 1, and negative 1. What are the y values? 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi, right? Now let's graph these. 0, 0, 1, pi over 2, 0 pi, negative 1, 3 pi over 2, 0, 2 pi. Does it still follow the same pattern? Is it the same pattern? Center, left, center, right, center. So what's this going to do? Is it going to go on forever? Right? Now, what's the title of our day today? What about this word right there? Is this a function? Why isn't it a function? Yes, if you draw vertical lines through here, it fails. It's not a function, so we have a problem. We need a function, and that's not a function. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to snip out one piece of it. Okay? So we're going to cut out this piece right there. Now, if we only look at my highlighted piece, is that part a function? That part's a function. So that's what's going to change when we look at these. We just get to look at one small piece. Now, if you were thinking about quadrants, right, the unit circle, right, this is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. If you were thinking about that, and we look at this right here, what is it from here to here? Which quadrant is that from 0 to pi over 2? That's quadrant 1, right? And what comes before quadrant 1? Quadrant 4. Okay. Now, are we going to use quadrants 2 or 3? We're not using quadrants 2 or 3, are we? And we're not using quadrant 4 that's far away. We're only using quadrant 1. So let's draw where you're going to be allowed to look for answers. Now, thus far, you've been able to look in all 4 quadrants anytime you want. Things are going to change now. You're going to be very limited on where you can go. So you see right here that I'm allowed to go to quadrant 1. Now, I'm not allowed to go all the way around to get to quadrant 4. How do I get to quadrant 4? I go backwards. So when we look at inverse sine, okay, you're only going to be able to get answers from these 2 quadrants. These are positive, and what is sine down here? Negative, right? So your positive answers will come from here. Your negative answers will come from here, okay? And I'll explain that in a minute. We'll practice them. Let's look at cosine. What is the starting point for cosine? Well, we got pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. So cosine starts up at 1 and then goes where? That's cosine, right? So tell me what the x, y values are. X is going to be 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. What is cosine at 0? 1, 0, -1, 0, 1. So what is the inverse going to be? What are the points on the inverse? All we have to do is switch these, right? 1, 0. Right? Is that good? Yes. No. Okay. So let's graph these. Again, you've got pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi, 1, -1. So let's graph 1, 0, 0 pi over 2, -1 pi, 0, 3 pi over 2, 1, 2 pi. So does the wave look exactly the same as it did before? Okay, is this a function? No, because it doesn't pass the vertical line test. It's not 1 to 1. So we're going to clip out one small piece. Now, if I just look at the yellow part, if that's all I look at is that yellow part, a function. It is. Which quadrants are these? This would be quadrant 1. This would be quadrant 2. So when we look for cosine, we're only going to shop in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. The positive answers will be here and the negative answers will be here. Okay? The big thing, I'm not going to make you graph a lot of inverses. The big thing I want you to get out of this part is believing me when I say you only get to look in 2 places for answers now. You don't get the whole plane. I want you to see why that is. Okay? Next, we have tangent. What does tangent look like? Well, what's tangent of 0? Remember, tangent means slope, right? So it's undefined this way, and it's 0 this way. So at 0, it's 0. At pi over 2, it's undefined, 0, undefined, right? And we've graphed this before, and you know that tangent is dotted line 0, dotted line 0. So we know that tangent looks like this. Right? So at 0, tangent is 0. At pi over 2, it's undefined. At pi, it's 0. So let's go over here. What are we going to put over here? X's. Let's write our inverse down. So what's it going to be? 0, 0. And then it's going to be undefined at pi over 2. So there's pi over 2. So 0, undefined, 0, undefined. So what inverse tangent looks like is this. But is there another one right on top? This would go on forever, right? And we can't have that part because then we're no longer going to be a function. So for tangent, we only get to use, we're going to use this part. So we're going to use quadrants 1 and 4. Right? Because this would be quadrant 1. This would be quadrant 4. If we went up to here to 2 and 3, then we'd be stacked on top of it, and that wouldn't be a function, right? So tangent is the same as sine. We haven't talked a lot about that. The reason being tangent and sine are both odd functions, cosine's an even function. That's why tangent and sine have a lot of the same characteristics. Okay, so everything we just went over was me getting you to believe what I'm about to tell you how to do this, okay? That was really the explanation of why we get to choose what we get to choose, so you'll believe me and won't be like, why did you just tell me that? So let's get into the real part of today. The inverse of sine is either written like this, right? Or it's called arc sine. This terminology or this symbol means inverse, means x and y are switched. Cosine will be the same. It's either cosine or, what do you think it is? Arc cosine or tangent or arctan. Okay, this is the same terminology. It means the same thing. Now, when you see a question like this, an inverse question, what is that saying? It means what angle, right? What angle is has a sine of 1/2? And let me get blank paper. Guess where we're going? Guess that we need to be experts at. Get out, either get your brain out or write it down. We are weak in this area because we've had notes the whole time, right? So we have 0, pi over 2, pi. Well, no. Let me put my other ones in first. I'm not going to just do those. What do we have? Pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3. Then we'll have pi over 2. And we have pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So y'all fill that in real quick. It's much easier if you have this as a visual aid. And again, those of you, most of you are juniors. When you go to calculus next year, I think they'll have the whole system figured out, and I doubt that we'll get notes again. That's kind of a COVID thing, right? So let's make sure you know this. What's sine of 0? Y'all gotta tell me what's sine of 0. 0. What's cosine of 0? What's tangent of 0? 0. What's sine of pi over 6? Cosine? Tangent? Okay, y'all, this is our last test. If you're having trouble filling these in, what do you need to do? You need to pull out a blank piece of paper and do these a couple times a day. How long does it take? 45 seconds. Please do this. Make sure you're good. These numbers never go away. And if we don't know them, it just makes life really hard if you have to keep looking them up. So make sure you know them. Did I get them? Write those down because we're going to need some other things to write down. You kind of need this is a new brain for your test. y'all know that having something to look at helps a lot versus trying to just thumb through your notes. Take advantage, right? So what's happening today, right, is we are saying, here's your number, what angle did it come from, right? The last test was mainly about me saying, what sine of 3 pi over 4 or something? And you would come up with 1/2 or -1/2 or negative square root of 2 over 2, whatever the answer was. Today, we're giving you these answers and you got to go back and tell us what angle it came from. Okay? So have these out and ready. Now, where do they exist? I just told you that, but we're going to color it again. Where does sine live? Arc sine. Where does cosine live? Where can you look for answers? Arc cosine. And what about tangent? What do you notice about tangent and sine? They're the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write arctan over here. So I only have to write it out once, okay? It's going to be the same thing. So of course, this is 1, 0. This is 0, 1. Right? This is 0, and that's pi over 2. Now for tangent and sine, this is pi over 6, right? Pi over 4, pi over 3. Now, I told you you could also look in fourth quadrant. So what is the name of this angle? If you started here and went all the way around, it would be 11 pi over 6. But you can't go all the way around because you're not allowed to go over here. That world doesn't exist. So you have to go this way. So what's the name of that angle in fourth quadrant? Negative pi over 6. We don't have to do 11 pi over 6 for sine or tangent. So then what's the next one going to be? Negative pi over 4. And what's the next one? Write this in your notes, but then later on, nice and neat, add that to your brain. You need that on your brain. Now, cosine goes through, and of course, we got pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3. But cosine keeps going to get its negative answers over here. So what is this one called? 2 pi over 3, right? They keep their same names because we're in the second quadrant. 3 pi out of 4, 5 pi out of 6. Now, how easy are these numbers to know? What do you notice about those numbers always? The top is one smaller than the bottom, right? So 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4, 5 out of 6. It's easy to know those. And of course, there would be pi. Pi over 2. And this down here for sine and tangent would be negative pi over 2. Okay, so do you have a picture of where these live? So take a second and add these to your new brain. Make them nice and neat. You can do this tonight if you want to. This is going to be arc cosine, and this is arctan, arcsine. So make yourself I'm not going to take time to do that now because we did it in your notes, but add that to your brain because you need to be able to look at that while you do homework. So let's see now what questions would look like. Okay, that's the best way to learn to compare. So compare the difference. Now I want you to notice, what's the difference between these two questions? What's the difference between this question and this question? This one's an inverse. And if it's an inverse, we only get 2 quadrants. So let's see a technique. Sine is 1/2. Is this 1/2 positive or negative? Positive. So where would I look? 1 and 2. And what angle gives me a positive 1/2 for sine. You know, just go look, it's a pi over 6, right? And so this would be pi over 6. And what would this one be called? 5 pi over 6, right? Now we did these on your last test. Here's how today changes. This says sine is 1/2. Now, when you see the little -1 or an arc, you don't get to use these quadrants. You only get to look here and here. So instead of getting 2 answers, you're only going to get 1. Your positive would come from here, your negative here. Where is sine 1/2? Pi over 6. You see the difference? Let's look at this one. Remember, these are the old ones that you've been doing since the last unit. This little guy is new. This is our new problem. So let's look. Okay. Sine is a negative 1/2. Which quadrants would sine be negative in? The bottom, right? So what is, this is a 6 bottom, right? So what are the names of the angles down here that are 6s? 7 over 6 and 11 over 6, right? True? True? Okay. Now what about this one? Remember, this side is gone. Here's a positive answer. Here's a negative. So which quadrant am I going to look in for that negative 1/2? Right here. I got that angle. What's the name of the angle if it's in 4th quadrant? It's not 11 pi over 6. What is it? Negative pi over 6, because you had to go this way. It's a negative angle. Does that make sense what the difference is between this problem and this problem? All right, I'm going to let y'all try the next one. You guys try this one now. Always look. Cosine is positive. We look here and here. This one has an inverse. So we're only allowed to look here and here. This would be the positive. This would be the negative. So on this one, we only have 1 quadrant to look at. All right, go. Get that one done. If you finish this one, try to go on to the next one. I want to give you a second to work, and then we're going to check them. All right, where is cosine positive 1/2? What kind of a bottom is it? It's a 3 bottom, right? And then 1/2 there would be pi over 3. And what do we call pi over 3 in the 4th quadrant? 5 pi over 3, right? This is your old stuff from last unit. Now, what about here? I don't get to use this one because it's negative, so I only have 1 answer. Pi over 3. Can you do this if you don't know last unit? No. If you need to get out your old brain and label it, do that. Okay, cosine is negative 1/2. Where would that be? Here and here. We know it's a 3 bottom. What's the name of 3 right there? This would be 2 out of 3, and this would be 4 out of 3, right? Now this one, we have this symbol. So that means I'm only allowed to look here and here. I'm gonna, not there, sorry. Here. Now it's not the positive one, so it's an angle in 2nd quadrant. And what do we call the 3 that's in 2nd quadrant? 2 pi out of 3, right? I can't tell if y'all are okay. Are y'all okay? On your screen, put one of these. If this is okay, we've trimmed down where we can look. And a high five is good. All right. Where is tangent 1? It's positive here, so that's what? Pi over 4 and 5 pi over 4. Where is tangent inverse -1? We only get to look here, and that is pi over 4. The positive answers are going to match where they were before. It's the negative ones that won't. Tangent is -1. That would be here and here, right? That's where tangent's negative. So theta equals 3 pi out of 4. And what is this one? 7 pi out of 4. Now, where is tangent -1 for inverse? I only get this quadrant. And if I go backwards, what do I call that angle? I don't call it 7 over 4. What do we call it? Negative pi over 4. So you're going to notice that sine and tangent are always just pi over the number. It's just if they're negative, they're negative. So those are really easy. Cosine, you've got to go look in that second quadrant. So I kind of made you a list here. Are you looking for an angle or are you looking for a value? If you're looking for a value, you get one answer. Example, sine of pi over 3. You get one answer. Square root of 3 over 2. This one, you're looking for an angle. So it's like saying sine of theta equals 1/2. And you've got to go find that. If it's not an inverse and we're just looking at the circle, you get 2 answers like we did up here. If it's an inverse, we only get one answer. Well, I shouldn't put that because that's not. Okay. Does that make sense? Now, what you have to be careful of in your future is whether you're looking for an inverse or a regular one. So these are all inverses, right? On the next page, though, I gave you some regular ones mixed in with inverses. So for me as a student, when I look at these, it's easier for me to say, okay, inverse, inverse, inverse. If you kind of identify all your inverses, are you less likely to make a mistake? What do you think? Are you better off to identify that inverse? Because then that highlight's going to say, oh, only look for one answer. Okay. So y'all take a minute and try these and we'll go over them together. The notes are online if you're at home watching. I'm going to stop this record. Have a great day. The key is online. So once you practice these, you can look those up.